This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 142. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's episode, there's been a whole lot of moving around in the wrestling world, and we've got some news and notes on that, as well as on WWE possibly being in trouble with both USA and Fox. Of course, we're going to talk about the biggest topics and trends in wrestling. And doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he is the Doc, John Macaroon, and the Doc and I are going to both preview and review what was the horror show known as Extreme Rules. What's going on, cuz?
Oh, man, you and I both don't have to worry about low ratings. Our ratings in the last 7 years have climbed steadily to the top, and we're happy to be broadcasting, talking professional wrestling. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about Extreme Rules. Because it was
it had you pissed off.
It was among the worst pay-per-views. Okay, now look. And you had said, there were some aspects that you really liked. Because in a wrestling match, there's the entrances, there's the in-ring action, and there's the finishes. And for me, I don't distinguish where I go, okay, if there's great wrestling but shitty endings. It seemed like Extreme Rules came up with such bullshit endings that it made it for such an awful experience. And thank God it ended after 2.5 hours. I rated it a D-. I didn't like the manner in which the Rey Mysterio match ended. I didn't like the cinematic match at all because they're overkilling it. I didn't like the manner in which when you have Kevin Owens basically steal the show in the pre-show kickoff, it's an embarrassment at the highest levels. Kevin Owens, in no circumstance, should ever be written in the pre-show. Under no circumstance. I don't care if he pisses off Vince. I don't care if he's offensive. I don't care if he's somebody that's political. I don't care. Kevin Owens in a match in a pre-show just makes it so that the rest of the card turns out to be stupid. And it was just a card for me highlighted by garbage finishes. It just seemed like the producers were like, let's just put out some finishes that everybody's going to talk about. But in my mind, it's killing your product. Good entrances that get people's attention, good in-ring work, and a finish that equates to a believable scenario makes for a great wrestling match. And when top to bottom, your finishes are all garbage, it just pissed me off sitting there trying to invest 2.5 hours to see some of those endings. I couldn't believe it. It was just a frustrating card top to bottom. I didn't like any of it.
So I'll agree with you with your overall premise on what the pay-per-view was. I thought there was a lot of good in-ring action. I thought the guys went out there and the girls went out there and they wrestled their asses off. But I thought the finishes were convoluted and I thought they were bad. I thought they were poor. I thought WWE out-WWE'd itself with this pay-per-view. And we'll just kind of jump into it real quick. So Owens ends up defeating Murphy in the kickoff show, and probably the best match of the night was your kickoff show, was Kevin Owens taking on Buddy Murphy. And like you said, that should never be the case. For this pay-per-view, it was. After that, Cesaro and Nakamura end up defeating the New Day to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles. I'm okay with that. I'm excited with that because it's some new life. This is a different tag team. You got some guys getting the belt. I think New Day can now chase if that's the direction they want to go in, but I don't have a problem with Cesaro and Nakamura winning the belts here. So 2 matches in, I'm okay with everything. Bayley ends up hanging on to defeat Nikki Cross. I don't think this surprised anybody. So 3 matches in, I'm okay. MVP then declares himself the winner by forfeit and is now the U.S. champ as Apollo was not cleared to wrestle. So the thought process is Apollo Crews is dealing with either having the coronavirus or he's got some symptoms of COVID-19. So he's not been able to wrestle. He's basically been quarantined. So MVP is going to take it upon himself to declare himself the winner by forfeit. Again, you can do some interesting things with this. You could tell a story. 4 matches in or 3.5 matches in, I'm okay with this. Now, this is where it kind of gets off the tracks for, I think, both of us. Seth Rollins versus Rey Mysterio. Now, I thought this was a really good match. I thought Rey Mysterio made Seth Rollins look incredible. I thought the character development from Seth Rollins has been so good, and I know you don't like it, but I love the character development of Seth Rollins, and I think it's been fantastic. What I don't like is how they portrayed this ending. By popping out a fake eyeball, I don't think it was necessary. Having Seth Rollins then throw up along ringside, I don't think it was necessary. Do you realize that they were going to CGI an eyeball popping out of Mysterio's head?
No, of course.
And then what happens is Vince seen it, and he was like, I don't like that. Let's do the prosthetic instead. This match was great, and then Vince had to get involved, and it was absolute shit.
And the part that I didn't like was the constant going for the eye. I thought it ruined the match. I thought they could have had a decent wrestling match had they picked any other stipulation. Any falls count anywhere, last man standing, cage match. It just was a stupid premise. Whoever came up with it should be fired. It was an unbelievably disappointing ending, and it wasn't even close to believable. Yeah, seeing Seth Rollins vomit wasn't a nice aesthetic either. I just thought that it was garbage and pure, poor written garbage from WWE. I couldn't believe it because it ruined what I thought was a top angle. Terrible finish. And who knows what this means for both going forward, but I didn't need to see that ending at all. And as you said, the ridiculousness starts to get heightened as we go through this card.
Yep. So now you've got Sasha Banks versus Asuka, which this right here was a fantastic match. This was a really, really good match. I thought the women brought it in this match. Both Sasha Banks, who was great in the ring, and Asuka, who was an absolute warrior in the ring. I thought they both put on a fantastic show. All right? And I get what you wanted to do here. You didn't want Sasha to win the title, and you didn't want Asuka to necessarily lose it, so you got to come up with some weird, convoluted way to make it work. I get it. The way you went about it was piss poor, though. I thought having Bayley strip the referee of his jersey so she could put it on so then she could do a 3 count, I think it just makes everything so messy. In our notes, I've got Sasha won, ? I'm not even sure how this works with Asuka. I have no clue what happened here. It leaves you hanging on. So I guess if you are a WWE creative person and you're trying to get viewers for Monday night because your ratings have sucked for week after week after week after week, this kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger because I was like, well, I guess now I've got to watch Monday to see if they address this because I don't think Sasha won this, but Asuka didn't win it, so I don't know who won it. I thought this was another incredibly poor finish for what was a very good match.
It was a match of the year candidate. It was awesome. Sasha, Asuka were telling a great story. I was into it. I wanted to see what happened. Sasha doesn't deserve to win a title. This was a perfect opportunity to elevate Asuka. If you're Asuka, you're like, oh my God, I'm getting the WWE treatment here. I'm getting the EC3 Eric Young treatment. I'm a champion and I get beat by Bayley, who puts on a referee's uniform and counts to 3 and the match is over. It ruined a match of the year candidate, and it was so the height of ridiculousness that it was kind of like, huh? You know, what were you trying to do with that? You ruined Asuka. You elevated, I get it. You elevated Sasha Banks, and now she's a tag team champ and a world champ, but it's overkill. It's a manner in which this was a classic. This one needed, if you wanted to go herky-jerky, a no finish, where Bayley just comes in and destroys the referee and beats up Asuka. And then you could pay it off with a title change later. The way in which WWE is trying to creatively do endings to push things forward was stupid. And I just thought that if you have a match of the year candidate and you decide to ruin it in this manner, it was the height of how pissed off I was. I was just like, this is stupid. You ruined a quality match and you're ruining a gimmick that is actually really good. Asuka deserved a year reign. She's really that good. Mm-hmm. And you can elevate her to the status of a Charlotte. What's going on? What on earth would preclude you from elevating Asuka? Yeah, her promos aren't the best, but you could stick any underutilized male to have a speech for her. Somebody funny, a Sami Zayn, somebody else. Even if you want to be unique, you want to have a little flavor to MVP, you want to be multicultural, multi-ethnic, have Asuka turn heel and join MVP. You have so many avenues of elevating Asuka to higher degrees, and you just squashed her, and it's stupid. So I was just so frustrated, and in my mind, I just was disappointed that, Sasha Banks got the title here. Piss poor at the highest levels.
Then we get Drew McIntyre defeating Dolph Ziggler in what I'm deeming an all cards are stacked against you match. Basically, anything that Drew McIntyre could have possibly have done would have came back to bite him in the ass. He had to beat Dolph Ziggler clean in the ring while Ziggler had 0 rules to follow. This match was fine. It's what it was. What they culminated this piece of shit pay-per-view with left me scratching my head and digging in my ass because I don't know what it was. You have Braun Strowman and you have Bray Wyatt doing their thing at the Swamp. And I thought some of the cinematography was good. I thought the way they were trying to tell the story left you kind of interested, and you're like, all right, cool, this is okay. I thought the fighting was even decent. The way it ended, I don't know who won this match. I'm assuming Bray won this match, or did Braun? Because Braun knocked Bray into the Swamp. Next thing you know, the Fiend comes out and grabs Braun. And I have no idea what was good. This is such a convoluted story. It was difficult to follow at times, and it left me wondering what the hell is actually going on. I did not get it. I thought Braun and I thought Bray's acting chops were totally on display here, and I thought they could have won freaking Grammys or Emmys or whatever the hell you get for being really good at acting. I thought they could have got it here. But the actual story and the actual so-called, and I'm using finger quotes when I say this, the match, I have no idea what the hell it was.
Yeah, exactly. The best part was seeing Alexa Bliss as Sister Abigail. That was cute, but it was something that didn't need to take place. Yeah, if you wanted to be creative, you could have done something totally different with this. You could have actually had a match in the Firefly Funhouse. I mean, you have a perfect opportunity. You're the WWE. Tell that story. So you decide to have another cinematic match, and it fell flat because we're all confused. We're all like, huh? What's going on here? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have even had a traditional match. I mean, those two in the ring in their last opportunity did an okay job. So why not just continue? I just feel like sometimes, and it happens when you have this big corporation full of writers and producers and a lot of people that are throwing out ideas. Each category, each match has a producer, has a certain writing core, and they put together this match. In my mind, I think that when you have such an expansive operation, you end up getting stupid ideas. I think you just sometimes have to pare it down, have maybe 3 writing groups, and they handle everything. You don't need that many producers, that many writers to put stuff together, because it really is paralysis by analysis, and it's just too much. You could sometimes less is more. Give the people what they want, and I think Extreme Rules did not do in any manner what WWE would have intended. It was universally panned. Calling it the horror show at Extreme Rules was stupid. The entire operation, the entire night, didn't hit home in any manner. I felt like if that's what you're going to use to kick off SummerSlam, you did an epically horrible job. D-, and the more I talk about it, I'm almost going to talk myself into an F. I just thought that having Seth Rollins, and for me, you went through it, I felt like the Drew McIntyre match, Dolph Ziggler is a guy you don't want to have when you see a match, a thought that in terms of a performer going, wow, this guy's really good. Why are they underutilizing him? Dolph Ziggler's that guy. He is a guy that can work. He has great matches, and yet you've got him strictly in the mid-card and being underutilized. This guy is a top-of-the-line star. Wouldn't you love to see Ziggler, Jericho go back and forth, or Ziggler EC3, or Ziggler anywhere but WWE? So, bottom line, Extreme Rules was poorly written, poorly produced, poorly executed, and was a show that is going to fall in line with some of the worst in your houses. It's going to be in the top 5 of the worst pay-per-views you're going to see. It was just terrible. Let's just move on. I think
the only thing that good came out of it is you now go up on me by 2 points. Yeah. You lead 6.5 to 4.5 in our prediction results, and that's because you picked the Seth Rollins match correctly. Now, that was Sunday. On Saturday, if you took it in, you were privy to something that was absolutely fantastic. Impact Wrestling's Slammiversary was really, really good. And the way that Impact built this up was by showing different vignettes and alluding to different WWE talent either returning or coming to Impact Wrestling. And they've done this now since WWE had Black Wednesday when they released all of the wrestlers. And what you got at Slammiversary was you got to see Gallows and Anderson. You got to see Eric Young. You got to see the one guy who makes me wish I had access to Access TV so I could watch Impact Wrestling. You had EC3 show up in a vignette. I thought what Slammiversary did was fantastic, and it made me stop and think, right? And I was having a conversation with Putty as Slammiversary unfolded, and he was actually the impetus for this thought process. He was like, well, EC3's in Impact now. He's like, so I think I'm going to start watching Impact more. And I was like, that's really interesting. Like, I don't know if I would watch Impact more. I haven't really watched Impact at all in quite some time. But I found myself on Tuesday, because I had to go and find out when Impact aired. It airs on Tuesday nights. I found myself trying to DVR Impact Wrestling so I could watch it for my own personal enjoyment, not necessarily for the show, but for myself. So I think what Impact did with their Slammiversary was they helped create a buzz for themselves, and I think they've done a good job trying to bring eyes back to their product, which has me wondering, are you willing to take in some Impact Wrestling, or are you willing to watch Impact Wrestling after what was shown at Slammiversary this past Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. Impact is in the mix. Look, right away after Slammiversary, it makes the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. The Motor City Machine Guns returned. You had a nice kind of transitional match where Tommy Dreamer puts over Moose. You had Eric Young returning. You had quality matches that just kind of what the purpose was, from all accounts that you read online, was kind of a company reset. You know, the last couple of years has been kind of a transitional period, and now some investments taking place in some former WWE talent, which should infuse and really make for some great storylines. So it's new and fresh. If you're not paying attention to Impact, you're missing out, because this is a company that's been through the ringer and has produced the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. Legends have gone there. Kevin Nash, Scott Steiner, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff. So even though it's kind of always been viewed as like third rate, it has been a company that's been around now for damn near 15 years. And Sting was there. So you look at what's going on now with Impact, obviously the interesting facets are really there. And then you got to look at something that WWE can't do too much more, was with Deonna. You can't drop the ball on a talent that then goes to your competitor and shines. You drop the ball. It's
Deonna Purrazzo is a fantastic female wrestler. Like, I've watched her a ton in ROH. She's amazing.
Yeah. What did you not see? How do you miscalculate on her? And now she's right there at the top of the division. The only thing I would say, though, that would be a knock if you want to nitpick, that women's gauntlet situation or the Rumble, whatever they were doing, kind of was real, kind of low rent. It didn't hit in the manner in which I would say, because I got a chance to take it in a little bit. And so because it's part of a great show, it sticks out at how unusual that was. It didn't really highlight a lot of women, except the woman that won, which is great. She's going to step up and have a great opportunity going forward. But in my mind, I want to say that Slammiversary, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, pirate it, or, find $40, pull together a couple guys, watch it. It's entertaining. It's a good wrestling show, but you can find it for free. It's definitely worth your time to see it.
So what I will say is the reason for that weird gauntlet match with the women, I think it was more to display how many talented women they actually have in Impact Wrestling and how deep their roster is. I do agree with you. It was a weird match. It felt kind of wonky. Let's transition into WWE and what we've seen on Monday night. So MVP, it's absolutely obvious his stable is growing. You had Farouk in the back talking to MVP, and what you're going to get here is you're going to get a rehashing of the Nation of Domination. With MVP leading the stable. Do you like this? I mean, I find it to be really interesting to see everybody in this stable currently holding a belt except for Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley, obviously the muscle. I think MVP is the Farouk of this group. He is the leader, the unquestioned leader of this group. I like where they're going with MVP. I think this is fantastic. This is a guy who was brought in right around WrestleMania. I don't think they had a whole lot planned for him. No, actually, it was Royal Rumble they brought him in. They brought him in around the Royal Rumble. He was going to be just kind of throw-in for the Royal Rumble. He's a guy who they were going to bring back for a little bit, and he's basically got himself over and he's helped get Bobby Lashley over, and now he's got Shelton Benjamin in his group, and I like where they're taking this. I like this direction for MVP. Do you like the fact that it's going to be the Nation of Domination 2.0?
Absolutely. And everyone take this with the spirit in which it's intended. But if you're Shelton Benjamin, you're MVP, you're Bobby Lashley, you're probably like, shit, thank God there's some racial shit going on in this country because we're getting an opportunity. We might get some belts. We might get some airtime. They literally, which is embarrassing for WWE, might not have given this group a chance had there not been racial disharmony in the United States, had there not been social unrest. These guys don't get an opportunity. And it's disgusting. But at the same time, Shelton Benjamin must be like, hell, I'm getting some TV time. I'm going to get myself in front of the cameras. Hell, it's a good opportunity for me. So might as well take advantage of it. He's the 24/7 champ, right? You know, I saw some gold on one of those dudes. So you look at it and you say, you know what? Take advantage of the situation. Unfortunately, the reason why they're getting pushed might be whack, but it's going to be great. So let's roll with it.
So I was scrolling through looking for different topics for us to talk about, and I stumbled across this thing on Bleacher Report. And they asked the question whether or not Samoa Joe should be moved back to his role as a wrestler, which then got me to think, I don't know if I would do that. Well, you do need it, but I don't know if I would do that. So since April 27th, Samoa Joe's been part of the Raw commentary team, and we have both commented on how good of a job he does sitting at that booth. And there was an interview with Christian. There's been a couple other interviews with a couple other wrestlers, and he just kind of brings this no-nonsense, you're not going to intimidate me aspect to it. And it's a very real, to me it comes off as very real. It doesn't feel like he's playing a character. He feels like he is playing Samoa Joe. All that being said, I think his time as a wrestler in WWE has been poor. I don't think it's been very good. I think this has been a lot of stop and starts. I think injuries have really derailed his career in WWE. I remember watching him in TNA. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I couldn't wait for him to go to WWE. He goes to WWE, and it seems like he can't ever quite get over the hump. If you were to ask me, I would say leave him at the commentary desk because I think he does a fantastic job. I want to know what you would do. Would you put him back in his role as a wrestler, or do you enjoy him more as a commentator?
I feel bad saying this, but this might be an injury-prone wrestler. This might be a dude that can't get back in the ring because of the fact that every single time he gets a push, you can't invest in him because he's always hurt. And that's a dangerous proposition because now if you're Vince McMahon, in the back of your mind, you're like, what can we do with this guy? Because if we put him in a top feud, there's a chance there's going to be no payoff. We're going to have a lot of disappointed fans. So while I could agree with your argument in terms of ratings and numbers and work rate, the dude needs to get his ass back in the ring, but not at the expense of his health. But I think he does a great job in the announce booth, but it's just kind of, in my opinion, it's a waste of a talent. And it's going to go down as Samoa Joe as another NXT star, worldwide star, that the WWE misused. And that's a growing list that's really embarrassing. You could take and start a whole other company with misused talent, and you can't have that. And it's becoming systemic. It's becoming a list that's growing. Samoa Joe should be a top star, IC champ, regular top angles with the likes of AJ Styles, Drew McIntyre, Brock Lesnar. He should be back in that mix. This role seems silly to me because of what he can produce. And look, you can't just have one heel in the company, one top heel. I think this guy, Samoa Joe, could be among the top heels in the entire world. So get his ass back out there and let's hope he can stay healthy.
Now, on Wednesday, Keith Lee relinquished his North American title. This surprised me. I want to know what you thought about it, and does it make sense? Because I was looking forward to having Keith Lee be able to handle both belts and run with both big titles in NXT. Instead, he gives up on the North American title. What was your initial reaction to all of this?
I was surprised. I'm like, you could have put somebody over. You could have had him just have a match with somebody that was up and coming that you felt like could run with it and drop the belt. I think that's the tried and true tradition. Just giving up the title kind of, doesn't it diminish that belt? Like, oh, this is not important, so let's just throw it away. So I felt like it was the wrong decision. Exactly.
It's kind of what it feels like. So I don't know. I thought it was a weird move, but I think what you got out of NXT is that was probably the big talking point, which then brings us to AEW. And I wonder if AEW has a bit of an NXT/WWE problem. And it seems as though people who are high up in AEW can't seem to keep WWE out of their mouth. They tend to make a lot of references to WWE. Jim Ross ends up shooting on NXT saying, I don't know why you don't DVR NXT. We're putting out a way better product. You should be watching us. As AEW Dynamite unfolds, there's a lot of shooting back and forth at WWE. WWE does the same thing and takes shots at AEW. So it feels like there are two kids fighting in the same sandbox, and I'm not necessarily sure why AEW is going to stoop to that level, because if you ask me, I think AEW's product is much, much better than WWE's. And I think NXT's product is generally better than what you get on Monday Night Raw and what you get on SmackDown. So all that being said, AEW Dynamite is probably the premier show to watch if you're going to watch one of these four shows. So does AEW have a bit of an insecurity issue with WWE?
Yeah, it's a weird fixation because you're your own company, you're trying to build, and yet you have top WWE guys in a lot of your storylines, but I'm not so certain why on earth they would continue to focus so heavily on WWE. You're your own thing, you're winning the ratings battle consistently, and I just think that by constantly referencing them, you seem like you're jealous or you seem like you're overly fixated. When you got your own thing, it's really good. I think that the company of AEW needs to stay and focus on themselves because they're putting on great matches, great angles, great stories. People want to be involved in it. You're the clear number 2. So why do you got to keep discussing? Because everyone already knows the ills of WWE. Eric Young went on a premier national radio show and called the WWE system broken. He said, if WWE can't find 5 minutes for Eric Young, I'm not sitting outside Vince's office for 4 hours. I'm a grown-ass man. And if you don't know how to use me, then fine, I'm going to leave. And I think that's kind of the staple there of what's going on. Is there's a lot of guys that are not happy. And it's embarrassing because the best company in the world should understand talent and understand how to utilize it. So for AEW to constantly reference it, I get it. You know, Taz says that I talk about them because they're there. But you don't have to because you're your own thing. You're in the same ballpark. Worry about yourself and continue to grow because you're still not cracking 1 million people. The WWE is by far the clear number 1. Yes, you're number 2, but your ratings aren't so massive that you can talk about. It's not like you're getting 2 million views. You're getting less than a 1 share. You know, you're getting 680. You're getting 800,000 views. Less than 1 million people watching every week. So you got pretty established stars. So I think that AEW needs to stop talking about WWE and really focus on a lot of the things that they got going on themselves. I think they need to stop completely. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you have to keep going back to WWE. It just doesn't make sense. Focus on your own product, do your own thing. Something that I did take out of AEW Dynamite, I thought Cody's Extreme match or his no rules, no DQ match against Kingston was fantastic. And I thought it was fantastic for a couple different reasons. One, you don't ever get to see Cody in an Extreme Rules match. You don't really ever get to see him in a setup like that. But Kingston comes out, and if you don't know who he is, he's a very good independent wrestler. I think for a time he was in Impact Wrestling. I've seen him wrestle a few times, and I thought his promo that he cut, he was only given about 5 minutes on the mic, but it got you invested in him. It got you invested in why he was there. It drew you in to this quick, made-up story for this TNT Championship title. I thought the way both these guys worked was exceptional, and I thought this match was fantastic. I'm not sure if you've seen it the same way or not, but I was really, really impressed by Kingston.
All you got to say is, after the match, it spawned the hashtag sign Eddie Kingston from not only AEW wrestlers, but from WWE wrestlers. So it's an individual who used his time wisely, and he's a premier free agent that potentially earned himself a job. Based on that performance, I'd sign him. AEW should lock that boy in because he put on a good match. And I think the open challenge is doing what it's supposed to with the spirit in which it was intended, and it's getting people over that, you know, you're creating stars almost every week. And that's really cool for Cody Rhodes. I think that's a testament to him that the people that he's choosing have all delivered, and delivered in a big way.
And, you know, the TNT title is the one belt that you always beg for. You always beg for a television title. And that's what it is. And Cody does a great job going out there and getting stars over. I thought this week's AEW Dynamite, I thought top to bottom, it was just a very fun show. As it was unfolding, I was messaging with Putty. He seems to be my wrestling buddy now. Every time there's something big going on in wrestling, he's on the horn with me, texting back and forth. And he's like, man, this was such a fun episode. This was so great. And I was like, it's funny you say that because 5 minutes prior, I said that out loud. I was like, this is the one thing AEW does better than WWE. They don't ever take themselves too serious, and they always give the fans exactly what they want. I thought AEW Dynamite, from top to bottom, was just a really fun, entertaining show that gave you fun matches like the Young Bucks versus Blade and the Butcher, which Blade and the Butcher are in the back working on carving up meat, which is kind of their shtick. And I thought that was a really fun match. I thought your Luchasaurus and Wild Boy Jack Perry match versus Jack Hager and Chris Jericho, I thought that was really good. You got your reintroduction of Sammy Guevara. I thought that was fantastic.
Yep.
I thought everything that you got, I mean, even everything that happened with Darby Allin and Brian Cage and John Moxley, I thought all that was really, really good. I thought they did a great job building stories and adding layers to all these stories. And I kind of quickly, squished in all of this, there was an announcement about the AEW bringing in a women's tag team tournament, which had me thinking, because we don't get to see a lot of the ladies wrestle. We don't get to see a ton of women tag teams either. You did get to see 2 women wrestle this week in Ivelisse, who's fantastic if you ever watched Lucha Underground, and Diamante, who if you ever watched Impact, where she wrestled there, both of them are fantastic female wrestlers. Both of them have a Lucha background. Is it the right move, or is it too soon for AEW to have a women's tag team tournament?
Perfect time. It's the perfect time to have it. I want to see the pairings. I want to see some quality women's tag team wrestling. I have no problems with it. And memo to our intern Noah. I know you're listening. He took in NXT and was messaging me. We've created a new wrestling fan out of Noah because he's listening to our weekly show. So he took in NXT. Noah, tune in to AEW on TNT at 8:00 and tape NXT. You'll see a difference. And he took it in and he had some nice things to say about some of the angles on NXT. So that was cool. Noah is a very fine intern, a great acquisition from the Detroit Sports Podcast. So Noah, make sure you tune into AEW so we can have a fun discussion a little bit later on. But AEW is doing good, man. They're moving storylines. They're fun. It's a well put together show at this point in time, being that there's no fans. I just feel like some of the moments that have been created would have been deserving to have fans there, but it's a show now that is worthy to say from DocNJock. I think we can safely say that AEW, 8:00 Wednesday should be prime viewing. Tape NXT. Watch them both because they're both in the mix. But right now, AEW is better. And all they got to do is just buckle down and grow for themselves and stop trying to get over on WWE. The company's $1 billion company, and they draw 2 million viewers, and that's bad. You're a company that's not even drawing 1 million a year in, and you're, chirping and bringing in their guys and putting them in big angles. Put your nose to the grindstone and get some quality and build some stars. And good for Orange Cassidy, who made the rounds on ESPN and did a feature interview. So that was cool to see AEW being talked about on ESPN. So AEW is doing good work right now. They got to keep it going. The angles are fresh and all the title holders are in the right spot. I can't wait to see the next wave of contenders and mid-card talent kind of take shape. And I think the emergence of Orange Cassidy will be something to watch over the next 12 months. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What got your attention this week? What's the top of your mind right now?
So it sounds like Kairi Sane is in fact done with WWE. She is in the process of taping her final episodes. Sounds like she will be going back to Japan. Now this has been something that has been flipped and flopped over the past few months. So it wouldn't surprise me if she does come back at the last second. But as of right now, she is done with WWE and on her way back to Japan. It sounds like the door is left wide open for her. So if she does want to come back, there are no hard feelings, and she would be welcome back with open arms. Again, I think it's some bad creative by WWE to have a star probably get over and have her best match of her career on her very last night with the company. Makes no sense, and that was on Monday. Ringside News is suggesting that perhaps the USA Network and Fox aren't overly pleased with the figures WWE is bringing in right now for their weekly shows, as they have had continually falling ratings the past few weeks. The site is reporting that both USA Network and Fox has lost patience with the company and likely are over the falling ratings. They also note that people within WWE are worried about the declining ratings as well. However, doesn't seem to bother Vince McMahon. He's confident that the ratings will shoot up when fans return. Originally, Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega pitched the Good Brothers, Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, as members of the Inner Circle. Tony Khan agreed to it, but Anderson and Gallows decided to stay with WWE at that time, and then a few months later they were released by WWE to go on to join Impact Wrestling, where they are now. Speaking of some new joinees to Impact Wrestling, Kurt Hawkins, donning a mask, is the newest Impact Wrestling star who was let go by WWE. He has now rejoined the once was and now the revamped TNA Wrestling organization. And before we get out of here, a quick question for you. Speaking of AEW, it looks like Hangman Page and Kenny Omega are probably done, or they're sowing the seeds for that split coming very, very soon. Does Hangman Page go with FTR, or does he ride into the sunset solo? How do you have that breaking down?
I'm hoping he rides into the sunset solo. This is an emerging star. He's been percolating. He's on that same path of Orange Cassidy. You got a guy that kind of needs to be away from the tag team division. He needs to have the light shined on him, get into a nice feud. So I think he has to ride into the sunset. They got to have a nice series of matches with Kenny Omega. And if it's done right, I think you have a scenario in which Kenny gets over first on Hangman, then Hangman continues his trek and then gets it finally over in a great epic match and goes forward. You got to have two matches. Omega gets over first, but in such a close way, something happens where maybe he cheats, Young Bucks involvement, something happens that's a little bit not yet worthy of closing the feud, and then you have another big marquee matchup, maybe a cage match, something where you can kick off Hangman's career. And maybe if you want to keep it slow, he's the next TNT champ, being that that's kind of maybe could be a belt that's held by up-and-comers after Cody Rhodes. I think he needs to be on that trek to greatness, and I don't see that with, having a stable. Some guys need to be in a stable, but not Hangman Page. Absolutely not. And for Gallows and Anderson, to wrap that story up, if everybody doesn't know, they came out on their podcast and they talked about it. Basically, Paul Heyman went to Vince McMahon and said, cut these guys. And when AJ Styles confronted Paul Heyman, he's like, no, I swear it didn't happen. And Paul Heyman told Gallows and Anderson, if I ever lie to you or do you wrong, go bury me. And that's what they did. They went on their podcast and said, Paul Heyman's a weasel and he lied to us and he got us cut, which is absolutely a bad investment because, as we talked about earlier, the list growing of talented stars, you have Gallows and Anderson, a tag team that you were going to push. How do you risk alienating your biggest star? You pissed off AJ Styles. Yeah, you got him under contract, but, this is a guy that's going to be potentially another ambassador, and you piss him off. For what reason? If you don't like the direction or Gallows and Anderson got lazy or something happens, you just send them to NXT for a month or two. You don't cut them from the company. You can keep them. I mean, Triple H invested, told them, hey, we want you. What can we do for you guys? He personally took his time to keep him around, only to turn around to then go to Raw and be featured in an angle with finally AJ Styles, and then you turn around and cut him and waste him. You basically hijacked a portion of your show that had potential. Yeah, maybe it was slow. Maybe there were things that you didn't like about him, but the seeds were planted that this thing should have took off. And if you can't make it with Styles, Gallows, and Anderson, the club, basically WWE killed the club, which is how stupid can that be? So for Paul Heyman, it took, I have a lot of respect for Paul Heyman, but in that manner of talent judgment, if you're not a Paul Heyman guy, to get released or get put on a list with, and Vince McMahon goes, yeah, that's a good idea. How detached are you? This is Gallows and Anderson. What are you watching? Okay, I don't know about these guys, but they're with AJ. At the very least, dude, is Vince McMahon so old that he can't see that, hey, who did they think they were with? Did they think that Gallows and Anderson were with AJ Young, with Eric Young and not AJ Styles? He should have looked and said, oh, that's our best guy. That's AJ Styles. Who are those guys? They're his friends. Okay, they're here for AJ's here for 10 years. They'll be here for 10 years. That's like an easy keep to let them go. for Gallows and Anderson, though, 2 years with Impact, I think they wanted finally to be the big fish in a small pond, and maybe in 2 years they can come back to AEW or back to WWE with totally different vibe. But I can't imagine you're Gallows and Anderson, you don't go to AEW. You go to Impact. Not to diss Impact, but it's just from where they were to where they could be. Maybe they figured, well, Young Bucks, Lucha Brothers, FTR, we're not going to be the big fish. Gallows and Anderson are going to be the tag champs within 6 months, guaranteed. And they're going to get featured. They're going to write their own tickets. So I can understand that philosophy, and they can elevate themselves. But man, oh man, it's going to be fun, man. Impact is now on the map. We can talk about them a little bit more. So I'm excited, man. This was a great week of professional wrestling. I'm excited for what's going to come ahead for AEW and NXT and WWE, man. Good stuff.
Yeah, man, I think Impact now makes it into everybody's viewing. Like you said, it was a bit of a reset with Slammiversary. So interesting to see what happens going forward. I somehow have to figure out how I'm going to be able to take Impact in. I'm very sad that they're not on a... This has always been the problem with Impact, is their television deal's always been crap. So I got to figure out how I'm going to take it in.
Yeah, you got to find a way, or at least read the reports. And hey, hashtag Impact, man. The comments are always interesting. It'll keep you in the loop, no doubt about it. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Make sure if you're watching any of the great wrestling shows, interact with us, get in the mix. I appreciate Javier. I appreciate all the listeners, Adam, Salget, that get in and say, hey, I enjoyed that show, man. It was good. It makes us feel good that people are listening and engaging with the process. And we read all the tweets. So message at Detroit Podcast. We're big wrestling fans, huge marks, smart marks, that podcast each and every Friday. Looking forward to broadcasting with Adam Straczynski next week on the next edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.